Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Pei Gimel Amud Beis, 6 lines from the top. The Gemara until now has been discussing the tumah that the Chacham were goyzer on Avodah Zarah. The question now is that when Avodah Zarah has different sections, and one of those sections are detached from the Avodah Zarah, does that section remain Tameh, or does it lose its status as being Tameh? Ask the Gemara, Boy Rav Chama Bar Guya. Avodah Zarah yeshna la'evarim or eino la'evarim? Again, we're talking about Avodah Zarah that has different parts to it. So if one of those parts, one of those segments becomes detached, is it then something that's removed and no longer part of the Avodah Zarah, whereby it loses its status as being Tameh, or it remains Tameh? Where a person can easily reattach that segment, then that's not what we're asking. Why? Because the command mechaber is dami. That's as if it's still attached, and certainly that will then remain tamei. We're talking about a question as when a hedyot cannot reattach it. You need an uman, a craftsman, to then reattach it. What's the din in such a case? Because a hedyot, an average person, cannot reattach it. It's as if it's broken and therefore loses its status as being tamei. Or perhaps we say it's not lacking and therefore it still remains tamei. And there are those who ask the question in another direction. Where a hedyot, an average person, cannot reattach that segment to the Avodah Zarah, that's not the question. Why? The command because then we look at it as if it's certainly broken off and therefore it doesn't have tuma. What we're asking is when a hedyot could reattach it, what's the din? Does that now piece that is broken off, that segment, does that remain tamei, or does it lose its status as being tamei? What's the din? Since a hedyot could reattach it, therefore it's considered as if it's still attached, and therefore again it retains its status as being tamei. Or perhaps because it's taken apart and undone, therefore it loses its status as being tamei. The Gemara leaves it as teiku, an unanswered question. Ask the Gemara weiter, Boy Rav Achdavui Bar Ami, Avodah Zarah pechusa mikezayis mahu. If you have Avodah Zarah that's less than the size of a kezayis, what is its status? Ask the Gemara, Maski for Rav Yosef lemai. In what regard are we asking what the status is of Avodah Zarah when it's less than a kazayas? If you're going to say in regards to Isur was the question, we have a precedent of the Zvuv, the Avodah Zarah called Zvuv, from the place of Ekron. As the Gemara will explain, the Tanya, bringing a brisa, Vayasimu lahem bal bris lelohim. The pasuk in Shoftim says, and they will place the Avodah Zarah called Baal Bris as an Elohim, as a God, as a deity. Zeh Zvuv Baal Ekron. The brisa identifies this as being the Avodah Zarah Zvuv Baal Ekron. Melamed shekol echad ve'echad asa demus yirasoy umenicha betoich kisoy. That each one would place this deity in its pocket. Kivan shezochra moitzia betoikisoy umechabka umenashka. When it would remember its deity, then he would take it out, hug it, and kiss it to show its admiration for this deity, for this God. Ela le'inyan tuma. So it can't be referring to Isur because we know Zvuv is less than a Kezayis and it was considered to be Osir as an Avodah Zarah. Rather, we're asking in regards to Tuma. What's the din? If it's less than a Kezayis, does it still Metame? or not. Kivan de iskish l'sheretz, because we compare it to a sheretz, ma sheretz b'ke'adosha af avodah zarah nami b'ke'adosha. Do we say that since it's compared to a sheretz, which is only metame, which is metame only even when it's a ke'adosha, a lentil, then so too avodah zarah doesn't need to be a size of a kezayis. Even a lentil will be metame. Or maybe because it's compared to a mace. Ma mace b'kezayis af avodah zarah b'kezayis. Just as a mace is metame when it's a size of a kezayis, so too avodah zarah requires to be at least a kezayis. Omar Rav Avya v'item Rabba bar Ula Toshma. I'll bring you a proof from the following brisa. The Tanya avodah zarah pechusa mikezayis ein batuma kol ikir. The brisa says befeirush that if an avodah zarah is less than a kezayis, then it's not metame. Shneimar brings a pasuk vayashlech es afro al kever b'nei ha'am, and the king Yoshiyahu, when he was destroying, in this case, one of the idols was considered to be a plant, an asherah that was planted. He took it out and he burnt it. The leftover pieces he scattered on the kever of Bnei Am. The Brisa now explains, Ma mace b'kezayis, just as a mace, the kever is only metame when it's a kezayis. A mace is only metame kezayis. Af avodah zarah b'kezayis. So too, and avodah zarah is also metame only with a kezayis. So therefore, the Gemara concludes that indeed it has to be at least a kezayis to be metame. V'rabbanon lemay hilchasa, asked the Gemara, going back to Rabbi Elazar, who explained the Chachamim, who argue on Rabbi Akiva, who said that the Chachamim say that avodah zarah that was gazu upon the tumah is only b'maga when you come in physical contact with it. But b'masa, it is not going to be metame. Ask the Gemara, Rabbanon lemay hilchasa iskish l'sheretz. Why did they compare avodah zarah to sheretz? The loy metame b'masa, to say that's not metame b'masa. Lenida, why do they compare it to a nida? De'eno le'evorin, that it's not going to be metame with its aver, with its section, when it becomes detached. Lemeis, why is avodah zarah compared to a mace, according to Chachamim? The loy metame b'ka'adosha, that it's not metame like an adosha, rather needs the size, as we just said, of a kezayis. Ask the Gemara, ema l'chumra. All of these comparisons then bring out a kula. Why not bring comparisons and bring out a stringency, l'chumra? L'may hilchasa akshir rachamon l'sheretz. Why is it that the Torah compares the avodah zarah to a sheretz? L'tamuye b'ka'adosha, to mitamit the size of a ka'adosha. L'nida, why is it compared to a nida? L'tamuye be'evan mesama, to then mitamit even as stringent as an evan mesama, like a zov. Akshe rachamona l'meis l'tamuye ba'oyel. When the Torah compares it to a mace, it's to mitamit as the stringency of an oil, just as a mace, which is underneath an oil, will mutamed, let's say, kelim and adam, who are underneath that same oil, so too avodah zarah should do so. Answers the Gemara, tumas avodah zarah d'Rabbanan hu. That which the Chachamim, they were goyzer the tumah and Rabbanan. This is only midirabbanan. The kula v'chumra, the kula makshinon, l'chumra lo makshinon. When we have a kula and a chumra, so the Chachamim went lehakil, to be makil. And therefore, in all of these cases, Rabbi Elazar explains, that's how he explained the Chachamim. And therefore, they went lekula in regards to the gezerah of Tumah on avodah zarah. The Gemara now brings a new Mishnah in regards to items that are mekabel Tumah. In this case, the Gemara wants to know about a svina, a boat. Minayin the svina shita hara. From where do we know that a svina, a boat, remains tar, is not mekabel Tumah? The Mishnah brings a pasuk shenemar derech aniya belev yam. The way of a ship, of a boat, is in the heart of the sea. The Gemara now explains, asking pshita aniya belev yamhi. Certainly, of course, an aniya is placed in the lave of the yam. It's in the heart of the sea. Hakamash malan kiyam. It's coming to teach us. It's compared to a yam. Ma yam tohor. Afsfina tahara. Just as a yam which is attached to the ground is not mekabel tuma, so too a sfina is not going to be mekabel tuma. Tanya, the Gemara brings a dissenting opinion. Chananya oimer. Chananya said, Nilmada misak. Let us learn the reason why a sfina is not mekabel tuma, because we learn out from sok. Sok is something that has to be then carried. Indeed, not only is it something that's a kli, that is a kli kibul, but it's also something that is something that is able to be carried when it's full, and then so too, therefore, when it's empty as well. So says the Gemara, Masok mitaltil mole verekon, afkol mitaltil mole verekon. Just as a sock is carried, even as big as it is when it's full, as well as, of course, when it's empty, so too everything that is compared to a sock, including wood, is only mekabel tuma if it's something that can be carried when it's full, and therefore can mekabel tuma even then when it's not full and it's empty, if it could be carried. So therefore a boat, which is a wooden boat, can't be carried, and therefore its comparison to sock teaches us that it's not mekabel tuma. And since a svina, it cannot be then carried mole verekon. Ask the Gemara from these two answers, explaining why a svina is not mekabel tuma. My beinayu. What is the difference between these two opinions? Explains the Gemara. Ika beinayu svina shel cheres. If we're talking about a boat that's made out of ceramic, then that will be a difference between these two reasons. Man de omra aniya belev yom, honami belev yom. That opinion that says that the reason why it's not going to mekabel tuma is because it's compared to the sea. So even a boat that's made out of cheres will not be mekabel tuma. Leman de omra kisok hanoch diksive gabe sok. These that are compared, that are written by sok, the imetal telis molev reken in iloi loi. All of those that are compared to a sock like wood, those are going to then have the same requirement as the sock. If they can be carried when they are full, so then the mekabel tuma, whether they are full or whether they are empty. Aval svina shel cheres, afagav de'ena metal teles mole verekon. But a svina, if it's made out of cheres, does not have the same requirement as sock, and therefore a svina shel cheres would be mekabel tuma. Inami, alternatively, Svinas Hayarden, a boat of the Yarden of the Jordan River. Jordan River is shallow and it's narrow as follows. Leman damra aniya belev yomhi, honami aniya belev yomhi. It's still considered to be aniya belev yom. It's compared to the yam, which is attached to the ground. Therefore, even a Svin of Hayarden will also not mekabel tuma. Leman damra mitaltel is mole verekon. Honami mitaltel is mole verekon. However, the Manda Omer says that it requires to be compared to a sock, and therefore the wooden boat which is compared to the sock has to also be able to be carried even when it's mole verekon. Since over here it could be carried mole verekon because it's a smaller boat, therefore it would also be indeed something that is mekabel tuma, the wooden boat. Damar Rav Chanina ben Akavya mitnei ma amru sfinas hayarden tumeya. He explained why is it that a sfinas hayarden is mekabel tuma. Mivnei shetoyanin oiso bayabosho umaridin oiso lamayim, because they load it on the dry land and they put it into the water. So indeed, Rav Chanina ben Akavya taught us that a Sfinas Hayarden is mekabel tuma because it's something that can be carried mole verekon. Rav Yehuda Marav la'oylom al yimna odom es atzmo bebeis hamedrash va'afilu sho achas. He tells us a principle that always a person should be careful not to then not be absent from the beis hamedrash even for sho achas, because then he might lose the opportunity of a halacha that was never stated. Sharei kama shonim nishnes mishnazu bebeis hamedrash. How many years was this being discussed in the beis hamedrash? V'lo nizgal letaimo until Rabbi Chanina ben Akavya came and explained it. So there, a person who was absent that day would have lost that most important gem of a halacha that never was heard before. Rabbi Yonason, along these lines, a person should never hold himself back from the Beis HaMedrash and always be then present as much as possible in the Beis HaMedrash. He goes on and he adds, umidivrei Torah va'afilu b'shas miso, in regards to learning Torah always, even during the time of his death. Shenemar brings a pasuk, zois ha-Torah Adam ki yamus ba'ohel. This is the Torah when a person dies in the oihel. Afilu b'shas miso tehei oisek b'Torah. Even at the time of one's death, he should be oisek in the Torah. And indeed, the Shulchan Aruch paskins that a person should be loymei Torah afilu b'shas miso. Omar Reish Lakish ein divrei Torah miskaimin ela b'misha meimis atzmoi aleo. Reish Lakish says that the divrei Torah are not miskaimin unless a person is meimis es atzmoi aleo. What is that a reference to? A person should then meimis atzmo by then giving up unnecessary pleasures and indulging in things of this world. Shenema says in the pasuk, Zois ha-Torah Adam ki yamus ba'oihel.